What's up guys, this is Teddy. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This video we are going to be introducing the social media aspect of the app. We are going to design a place where users can network with each other. We can see other identity users in the app and all of the identity users that we created. As you can see right here, we've got some kind of, a bunch of dummy accounts. You will be able to see these people. You will be able to check out their mileage, their pace, or whatever aspect or whatever activity your app is designed around. Mine is designed around running, so it's kind of running themed, but if you made it for maybe video games or maybe you made it for musicians, you could do the exact same thing. You could meet other users in your app. And the way that we're going to do this, I'll just kind of show you how I'm actually have got this planned out. Is we're going to add a tab right here, and we're going to add runners. And by the end of the video, you'll be able to see other runners in the app, other people who have registered, and you can see other aspects of their running. And you will only be able to see the runners tab if they have logged in. You probably want to give that feature only to people who have logged in, because you want to have incentive for people to register for your app. Even if you don't plan on it, I still think it's a good design, and it shows you've put a lot of thought into your app as well too. If you have some kind of latent incentive, I guess would be the word. Such a stupid word. I made that up on the fly though, so just cut me a little slack. That was kind of a stupid little word there, but whatever. So we're gonna go ahead and let's just go. As always, I always like to start with the controller. You could start with the view, but I always like to start with the controller for some reason. And because this is called user, it probably would be better if we called it users. And in order to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go http get, we'll go users, and we'll just have that up there. So even though they go to the index, when they go to the actual URL, it's going to be users instead of user. And we can also go ahead here and start creating our view, and we need our user folder because it needs to match the name of the actual controller, which makes sense. Then we're going to go in here, we're going to actually create our view and see if we can just get some scaffolding up. And also, while we're at it, we can go ahead and create the layout too. And I'm going to go in here, let's see, I'm going to just put a nice little H1, we'll call it users, just to test if it works. Awesome. And then let's go to the layout and add the link so that you can immediately navigate to it when we go to the toolbar, because we're going to be testing this thing a little bit. So, all right. So the first thing is, since we already have this here, we can copy this. And this is not going to be a part of the login. This is actually going to be up here. And we'll go ahead and just put that up here. Go down here. Then go down here. We can copy this because they're almost identical. And actually, I'm going to get rid of this semicolon because I don't think we need that. I don't know why I put that there. Okay, bring that back, make this look a little bit better, and we can tab this in once again just to kind of spruce things up a little bit. The controller is going to be the user controller, and it's going to be the index. And instead of calling it users, let's call it runners. I think that is more indicative of what it really is, because you're networking with runners. But if you're networking with musicians or whoever you want to, you could just put musicians there, and that would be perfectly fine. Okay, and let's just fire it up, see if this thing works. Awesome. And we are actually, I'm actually logged in underneath the super admin. Let me make sure I'm actually in the super, yeah. The super admin has the ability to edit, delete everybody, and it can edit, delete clubs, and we'll also give that ability to the runners as well too. But if you log out, the runners is going to go away. So just be cognizant, please be aware of that. All right, now we need to start working on displaying actual data into the web page. And as usual, there's many ways that you can kind of go about this, but whenever I'm starting to start worrying about data, and I'm starting to have to worry about, not worry, but when I'm starting to think about pulling stuff from the database, I'm going to go ahead and start creating an interface, because an interface is a great way to kind of visualize things and start getting almost like a mental blueprint. And we'll just call this the iUser repository, and we can, all these are going to be async, and we're going to be pulling the app user. So get all users. Okay, and then for our detail page, we need to worry about the get user ID, and we're going to pass, because this is a GUID, the app user is actually a string or a GUID, and if you make it an int, it will not work correctly, so just be aware of that. Okay, then we have the user, then we have update, then we have delete. Okay, that's not right. So bool delete. Then we have bool save. And that is pretty much going to be it. So now we go into the repository folder, and then we are going to create the actual user repository. And remember, it's a repository because we're mostly just pulling from the database. That's really kind of what a repository is. And go here, iUser repository. Bring that in. We're going to implement that interface. Some of these I'm going to put these methods here, but a lot of these we're actually not going to use. I think the only ones that we're going to use are going to be this. We're definitely going to use the save. We're definitely going to use the update, because we're going to have to put a place for the user to be able to edit their profile, and we're definitely going to have a place for get all users. So next thing, with every single repository, we're going to have a constructor, and we're going to be manipulating all of this with our application DB context. All right. Okay. Then we're going to get all users to list async. Awesome. And because this is entity framework, we're going to have to bring that in. Very simple. As the app gets more and more complicated, we are actually, let's call this get user by ID. I think that's more better naming convention. Then we will go back. And if you didn't see what I did there, just always remember, this is a really good tip, is that you can navigate in between stuff using these back and forward, and it makes life a lot easier. So now we need to be able to get a user individually. So we'll go here, find async, very standard. If you don't know what these are, I will kind of give a nice overview. ToList is going to return a list of users. So whenever you're on the list page, say you're scrolling through your feed, or you're scrolling through all the users, you're going to be using a list. And when you actually click on the user, or you go to the actual user detail page, you're going to click that, and it's going to get the individual user by the ID. Sort of something that a lot of times I don't see explained, and just remember that difference. A detail page and a list page are absolutely pivotal to understanding how web pages work and fundamental to web development as a whole. So just remember, very important difference between a list page and a detail page. So then we're going to go over here. We're going to make an update, and this is going to come in when we have the users, or we give the users the ability to edit their own profile, which we will do in the next video. Right now we're just worrying about getting the users displayed. Awesome. So now we have all of our repository ready. The next thing that we want to do is we want to go back to our controller and start building out all of the infrastructure to actually see the view. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to go into user repository. So we're going to bring in our repository. And we're going to go user. So you go in here. Then we're going to bring that in. Then go read only, user repository. And need to make sure that we put in a semicolon, and we now have our repository and all of our database calls ready to go, so we can start bringing them into our controllers. So first thing is, whenever we hit this page, we want to show, whenever we hit this main index page, we want to show all of our users. So the first thing is to bring them in, just dump them all in the database. But we don't want to show, we probably don't want to show all of our users. So we want to go into our view models and actually create a view model for this. I think that is good. You could do it without a view model, but I really wouldn't recommend it. Okay, so let's go in here. We'll call this user view model. And that is what we want. So now this is going to be pretty much just a standard POCO, plain old C# object. Prop string username. And this will be pace and int and the mileage for the user. So a couple of running terms. If you don't know what a pace is, the pace is whenever you're running, if you ran like a 5K, your pace would be how much you run each mile, or how fast it takes you to run each mile in, say, like a 5K or a 10K or maybe even a marathon. And mileage is how much, these are terms for how much you run a week, in case that confuses anybody. So we've got that, we've got our user view model. Now we need to go back and we're going to map this without AutoMapper. And AutoMapper is a good tool, but for an app of this size, you really only want to use AutoMapper if both places that I've worked, and they were, huge production environments, both of them did not use AutoMapper, and I think that AutoMapper is a good tool, but a lot of times it can be a lot more trouble than it's worth, and I think in this case it's best just to map it manually, and that's what I'm actually doing right now. So we're going to go username, then we're going to bring in that pace, then we're going to bring in the mileage, and IntelliSense does a bunch of that for us, and then after that we add everything to this result part right here, and then we should be good to go. At least I think. Okay, we need to go back into this user view model, and we need to make this nullable. Because there could be, actually there probably is nulls in the database, and if you don't have that there, it's gonna give you an error. So the for each, so we got the for each right here, and trying to see. Okay, we actually need to wrap this in. We need to put the return type as a task. Okay, great. So let's go ahead here. See if we can boot it up, see if there's no errors. Awesome. Okay, and we also need to go into our program.cs file and bring in our repository. And I'm going to bring this in up here because it looks a little bit better. So copy that. We're going to paste that. User. And let's see if it works. Okay, it's working, but now we need to actually go into our view and start editing that. And let's go ahead. We're going to get that out of the way. Going to bring in our model first. It's going to be user view model. It's giving us red squiggly, so we need to make sure that we are bringing it into the namespace like that. And I am going to come in here and I am going to paste this. So if you want to go to my GitHub and I think it's probably better if you just copy this. I'm going to explain exactly what it does, but not exactly a front end class here. So we're just going to kind of copy and paste this HTML in. So item, what is happening here is that it is looping through this list. You should be very aware that whenever you have a list, if you just had the user view model, just if you're returning, and the next one is actually going to be an example of this, but if you just have the user view model, you don't have to use a for loop. But if you're returning a list of users, you're going to have to actually iterate through them. And whenever you use this for each, you're iterating through the model, and it's going to go through each one and display each and every user view model in the list. And here you have the @item it's going to essentially, for each one in the model, it's going to display them. Hopefully that doesn't hopefully that didn't confuse you too much, but we also have a detail page. So first we'll get this up and running and then make sure this is working, and then we'll start working on the detail page. So first, let me make sure, and we have all of ours. We have like this weird little thing right here, but we can get rid of that, and it looks like we're displaying all of our users. We will have to go back when we actually create the edit and we actually create the way that the user can go into their dashboard and edit their own profile and add their own picture. We can do that, and then we'll go back and add the pictures later, and also take away the ability to delete, because you probably don't want users to be able to delete their profiles. Sounds terrible, but it's kind of true. You don't want users to be able to delete their profile. So in this case, we're going to take away the delete button, but you can also add one. It's the same exact process. It's CRUD. There's nothing really anything different about it. So now that we have our list taken care of, now we're going to go in here and we're going to start working on our detail page. The detail page is just pretty much like every other single detail page. It's very, very similar. If you're noticing a lot of things, none of this stuff really changes too much. So, all right, detail. And because a GUID is not is a sequence of letters and numbers, it can't be an int, so make sure that your detail is a string, otherwise it's not going to work. Then we're going to get the individual user. Remember that we created that the ability to do that in the get user repository, and we're going to pass in that string to that function. Next thing, we're going to have user detail view model, and let's go in here and actually create it. So we're going to create it right here. We're going to go user detail view model, and that is pretty self-explanatory. And I think that this, yeah, we could just actually copy and paste this until we go and edit. We actually create the ability for the user to edit their picture and upload a picture for themselves. But for right now, we'll just make it the exact same as the user view model. And when we're ready, we can come back and change it. So user detail view model, we're going to go down here. Don't know. That's like IntelliSense. So go ID. Then we're going to go username equals paste user. Then we're going to go down here. Then we are going to return that user detail view model. A little bit easier because we didn't have to map anything. And that should be pretty much it. And then we're going to, let's go ahead and go down here and create this detail page. So go in here. We're going to go new item, or actually no, we're going to go to add view. So we go add view, and we're going to call this detail. Need to bring in our model. And we do, because it's not a list, it's just going to be one, just like that. We also are going to need to make sure to bring in the using. And just like the other, I've got the HTML on my GitHub, and I am just going, I'll leave a link down below. You can go to the GitHub, go into the user, go into the detail page, and go ahead, grab that HTML. And some of it is marked out because we haven't added the images yet. We need to add the ability for the user to actually be able to add the image. And we will go back later and add some extra functionality because the user page is actually looking a little bit bare. I noticed it just didn't look very realistic because there's hardly anything in there. But for right now, let's just kind of concentrate on getting it up and running. And once we can get all the infrastructure set up, we can actually start worrying about making it look a lot better. Kind of do one thing at a time. So here we've got our runners. Let's make sure, and then we can click onto the user, and we have the page setting right here. We have the location, and we have our detail page working with the GUID so that we can actually see the user. And that is pretty much it for right now. We can, in the next video, start working on being able to edit the user so that they can upload images of themselves and it can start looking more and more like a social media app. But anyway, that is going to be the video for today. I hope that you guys enjoyed this. If you did, make sure to hit that like button, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and as always, thank you for watching.